Welcome back. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer issuing subpoenas for 3 senior Biden aides yesterday, requesting that they sit for depositions in front of his committee. Comer wants to ask if they've, quote, created a protective bubble around President Biden amid his declining cognitive state. Deputy Director of Oval Office Operations Ashley Williams, Senior Advisor to the First Lady Anthony Bernal, and Deputy Chief of Staff Annie Tomasini, all subpoenaed. NBC's Chuck Todd, meanwhile, revealed how a high-level staffer told him back in 2022 that there were doubts that Biden could run for re-election. Of course, he tells us 2 years later. Watch.
I had a cabinet secretary 2 years ago.
Right.
Okay. 2 years ago. All out of the blue, ask me, do you really think he's going to, he can't run again like this? And I said, well, you have more interaction with him than I do. And they said, I don't have a lot of interaction with him. This is a pretty senior cabinet secretary. So, and this was 2 years ago.
I believe Chuck Todd has interviewed President Biden. He never brought it up. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman and House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Tell us why you have subpoenaed those 3 individuals from the Biden administration.
Well, I think every American has seen up close and personal that Joe Biden isn't mentally fit to be president of the United States. Now, what Chuck Todd just reported is what we've been saying in Washington, those of us who have been around the White House and around Joe Biden for over a year, is that he's been in a steep mental decline. What we've been able to determine is these 3 individuals I subpoenaed, no-name people, very behind-the-scenes staffers, have been leading the cover-up. They've been protecting Joe Biden. They've been limiting his interactions. They've been writing note cards saying, stand up, sit down, shake this person's hand, turn around and leave, head towards the exit. I mean, what it appears may have been happening is these 3 no-name staffers may have been running a shadow government. And I think this is a major cover-up. The question is, do we have a Manchurian president? And if so, are these 3 staffers part of a shadow government that's calling the shots with cabinet secretaries who have been confirmed by the Senate? Are they privy to national security information? This is a serious issue. This is an issue of national security, and it's an issue of the public trust. And I think what we're seeing now, amazingly, Maria, is the mainstream media is starting to report what we've been saying a long time, that something's not right here, and the American people deserve answers, and that's what we're trying to provide the American people.
Yeah, and we've been questioning this as well on this program, but we've got a panelist this morning, Joe Borelli from New York, and he says this is no different than what George Santos did. And George Santos was forced to leave. He lied on his resume. There's a whole lie cover-up underway. Is it similar to what George Santos did?
Absolutely. And you know what we've tried to do throughout the entire Biden influence peddling investigation is, first of all, give the American people the truth, and secondly, create an infrastructure where all the bad actors can be held accountable. What we're looking at now is the cover-up of the president's health, and have these low-level staffers been operating a shadow government. We know there are certain cabinet secretaries that haven't spoken with the president in months, which is very unusual. So we've got to get some answers, and these 3 are the first 3 individuals that we're going to bring in to try to get the truth to the American people. So
when you say the first individuals, you're expecting to send out more subpoenas then?
I think this will lead to more subpoenas. I think there's a whole group of staffers inside the White House and within the vice president's office who have known about Joe Biden's condition for a long time and who have taken active steps to cover up the fact that he's not mentally fit to be president of the United States. That is a huge scandal. That is a huge cover-up. We're going to get the truth to the American people, because the mainstream media, now they're starting to report about all of Joe Biden's shortcomings. It's really too little too late.
Yeah.
We've been able to give the truth. You've done a great job covering this, Maria, from day one, about all the Biden financial crimes and the cover-up from the deep state agencies. We're going to find out now who's been a part of the cover-up of covering up the fact that Joe Biden hasn't been able to perform his duties for a long time.
And you're also asking that the White House physician, Kevin O'Connor, testify before your Oversight Committee on Biden's mental state. You sent this letter to Biden's doctor questioning whether his medical assessments have been improperly influenced by his business ties to the Biden family and to AmeriCorps. This is a medical company accused of massive Medicare fraud, which was involved with the president's brother, James Biden. Mr. Chairman, connect the dots. What is the connection here?
Well, we know about Dr. O'Connor's association with Jim Biden and the AmeriCorps scheme because Jim Biden mentioned his name in our transcribed interview. We had never heard this before the transcribed interview. When we asked Jim Biden, what possessed you to get involved with a healthcare company? You have no healthcare background. And he immediately mentioned O'Connor was his advisor, and he had opened some doors for him, and he was working with O'Connor. So what we see today in Washington, D.C., where I stand in our nation's capital, the only two groups of people in America that think Joe Biden's fit for office are the Biden family and his physician. And what do they have in common, Maria? They were all involved in the influence peddling schemes, specifically the AmeriCorps Health financial scheme that's in court. It's a failed healthcare company. They owe creditors millions and millions of dollars. We know Joe Biden himself pocketed $200,000 from this scheme, and we now know that Dr. O'Connor was a part of this scheme.
So what about subpoenas or furthering that part of your investigation? Where does this investigation stand? Because in the past, you've used terms like money laundering, bribery, influence peddling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, and those weren't my words, Maria. Those were the words from 6 different banks in the 170 suspicious activity reports they filed with Treasury. But in my banking background, I can tell you they had a bunch of shell companies. They took in tens of millions of dollars in these fake companies. They never paid taxes on it. The bank said they were money laundering. I believe that. I believe they've committed many financial crimes. But what we found is there's been a cover-up with the Biden influence peddling schemes, with the Biden financial crimes. This cover-up's been ongoing for a decade now. We believe Merrick Garland is a central figure in the cover-up. What we've been able to do is have criminal referrals. We're going to continue to have more criminal referrals. We don't believe Merrick Garland will do anything with these criminal referrals, but we believe the next Attorney General will. And the next Attorney General is going to be able to go in, and he's going to have this investigation wrapped and sealed with a bow, and they're going to be able to hold these people accountable.
And of course, the crux of that investigation is Hunter Biden leading. I know it's an investigation of Joe Biden. You've said that many times, but Hunter Biden is right in the middle of it. Now the White House claims that Hunter Biden does not have any access to classified information since the president's disastrous debate performance, even though he's reportedly acting as a gatekeeper to his father, sitting in on White House meetings, alarming staffers. I spoke with House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner yesterday about this because he's investigating Hunter's access to the White House. Watch.
If the president's not able to do his job, he's turning to his son. His son certainly has no qualifications, should not be involved in these meetings, but certainly should not have access to classified information about some of the most important threats and secrets that face the country. I think this is a pattern of the family business that we've all looked at from the Bidens, because I think that the president doesn't see any division between what he does and what his son does. So it's natural for him to grab him and take him into meetings of what could be some of the most important things facing the country. But as we question whether or not the president can do the job, you've also raised the question of, well, then who is? There's nobody behind the curtain that's running the operations of the White House.
So, Mr. Chairman, what about that? What do you make of Hunter Biden in all these important meetings, and how does that fit into your probe?
Hunter Biden shouldn't be allowed through the TSA line, much less serve as the de facto chief of staff, which is what's happening now, according to the New York Times. So I think that was the final straw for a lot of Democrats, especially the Democrats on the Oversight Committee, who have said publicly there's no evidence of wrongdoing with Joe Biden. When they found out that Hunter Biden may be the puppet master pulling the strings, I think that was the last straw, and I think that's why the Democrats are now coming out in the droves calling on Joe Biden to step down. Hunter Biden's a bad person. He's been selling access to our enemies around the world, access to Joe Biden for over a decade. He's going to pay when we get a new Attorney General. He may pay with this Attorney General. I mean, he's committed so many crimes. Even Merrick Garland's Department of Justice is having to prosecute him for tax evasion. So this is unacceptable. This should be a national security nightmare in every American's thoughts, and I think it's starting to resonate with the American people, and the mainstream media is finally reporting it 2 years too late. But I think something's going to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Biden replaced very soon on the top of that Democrat ticket.
Well, you write to the doctor, the Oversight Committee is concerned your medical assessments have been influenced by your private business endeavors with the Biden family. Real quick, have you heard back from O'Connor? Have you heard back from the 3 who you've subpoenaed to come testify to your committee?
We just subpoenaed those 3 yesterday, so we'll give them a few more days. With Dr. O'Connor, we gave him until tomorrow. If I don't hear from him tomorrow, then I'll issue a formal subpoena to Dr. O'Connor.
All right. Great to see you this morning, sir. Thanks very much. We'll be following your work.
Thank you.
All right. Chairman James Comer in D.C. this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back.